Hi y'all, welcome back to the garden. So it's Labor Day actually, and I figured I'd come out here and shoot a video. It's been a moment, but I went to the Perennials Connect and Create event, which was really fun. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I brought some trees back and a few other plants I'll show you. And I did some work yesterday and the day before in the back garden space. Burned the remaining stump out in the back garden bed, so I was able to plant some things around it and get that buttoned up and finished for the season. And I edged around my green giant Arborvitae, so that got done. Brought in some more mulch, so I'm trying to button up some spaces for fall planting, which I'm not sure how much I'll be planting this fall. I do have some things to plant that are sitting and waiting to be planted, but we've not had any rain in several weeks now, so I'm trying to hold off on planting stuff that I can't immediately put on drip irrigation because I don't want them to just suffer or me have to hand water them like I've been having to do to all the geraniums I planted several weeks ago, and then we've got no rain since. So if you want it to not rain, just tell me to plant something that's, not on drip irrigation, and that will definitely happen. After all of the heat, the garden is looking okay in some areas. Some plants are definitely tired. I continue to be super impressed with all of the pollinators I've had this year though. They are just covered up. I've focused a lot on this garden in putting in plants that bloom for a very long time and that are pollinator friendly. So we have like this 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, also commonly known as calamint. Very good pollinator. You can probably see it's just covered up with bees right now. And even this drops of Jupiter oregano down here seems like almost every flower has a little pollinator on it. But I learned lots of things at the Perennials Connect and Create event, which was really fun. So one of them was that these Peruvian lilies that are coming out next year from Walter's Gardens, you don't really want to cut the stems. If you want to harvest any of them, you just pull them from the root, and that encourages the plant to produce more blooms. So that was really neat. So I need to come through and pull some of those that have bloomed out to get rid of them. I did come through before I went to the event and chop back some of my perennials, including my opalescence phlox over there. I did cut down the yarrow. I also cut back all this gaura I had right here, and it's looking a little rough, but I also discovered underneath all of that gaura a huge infestation of nut sedge, which I pulled before I went to Walter's Gardens last week, and I need to come through and pull again. Nut sedge, I have found that it is, and it's just commonly very difficult to pull. If it's rained a lot and the ground is soft, you can successfully pull it. I came through earlier this season and dug up all of the nut sedge I had along the sidewalk, and there's been no return of it at all, which is great. The reason it returns is it produces those little bulbs underground, and if you don't get the entire root system, then it will come back. So you have to very carefully. So in situations like that, you could irrigate the area really well, let it sit, maybe irrigate it again, and then come through and pull it very slowly from the ground and get all the roots, and that will definitely help. But when it's really dry like it is right now, it's really difficult to pull it, especially in our clay soil. So you need to wait, or you'd end up having to use like an herbicide. There's something called sedge hammer that works really good for yellow nut sedge. I haven't adjusted my irrigation down for fall yet because I'm still kind of curious as to whether the temperatures are going to go back up. We've been in the low 50s as our low and the highs of mid 70s, which has been wonderful to work outside in. But I am not used to in Ohio having much of a fall. Fall's my favorite season, and we typically just stay, seems like really hot. And we might have a few weeks of like nice weather before we have our first frost, which is really annoying. So I'm hoping we actually have a true fall this year, and I would be perfectly fine if it stayed these temperatures through October, so I could get some things done and the garden could recover from the heat and no rain that we've had before we head into fall, because if plants are stressed at the first frost, you're more likely to lose them over winter. And so I want to make sure that they're happy going into winter. So I'm going to keep the irrigation going regularly, let them recover, as they start pushing a little more growth in this cooler weather. And then I may pare it down a little bit. I'm hoping we start getting some rain though here in the next several days to weeks. And that would be really great for lots of things. So this year, Walter's Gardens hosted Proven Winners Connect and Create event, which is the perennial division of Proven Winners. They're the licensee that produces all of the perennials for the Proven Winners line. And it was really fun to learn more about their perennial growing process. We got to see them be potted up from little plugs into bigger containers before they go out and are sold to nurseries to grow on. And then we got to explore some of the fields where they're growing stuff. It's really interesting to see like perennials being grown as crop in fields. And this in Michigan where they're grown, the fields are very sandy, so it allows the bare root perennials that they're growing to bulk up quite a bit for sale to the nurseries. So behind me here yesterday or 2 days ago, I came out and edged this bed here. I'm trying to decide what to do with this bed. So if you've been following along since 2023, I got these Arborvitae from Brown's Nursery at an auction for about $100 a piece. And I had someone come out and dig a hole because they were really big to begin with and plant them for me. Well, I thought I had measured them out really evenly, and they're not quite as even as I thought they were going to be. Or the guy planting them just got off a little bit. So you can see these are a little closer than this over here. So I'm trying to decide whether I go by maybe 2 more Arborvitae for here and 1 for here and plant them in the center and then just let them form a wall. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. I need to do some measuring and see what might be best, but I think the 2 here and 1 here is probably going to be the most appropriate. But I'm afraid the spacing's not going to be perfect, which will then bother me in perpetuity. I also considered planting perennials to trial in between there. Green giant Arborvitae grow really quickly and they can get kind of wide, so I'm concerned about planting too much around them and then just having to move it later. So this may just be in continuous evergreen hedge. So this fall, Brown's is having their auction again in a couple weeks, and I'll probably go there and see if I can get some more Arborvitae to plant in this space, or see if I can just find some. They don't need to be the same size. They'll grow pretty quickly and catch on or catch up to the others eventually. And now that I have irrigation in this area, I can definitely put them on irrigation. Something else I learned when I was at Proven Winners this past week is tissue culture. I'd always thought you just get the same plant out of a plant that you're taking tissue culture from, but plants in the wild can exhibit some genetic modifications or variations depending on the environmental factors they're exposed to, just like other humans and other animals can. And so sometimes people will take tissue culture from a plant that has like an offshoot that's been genetically modified by its environmental conditions, and then that creates an entirely new sport of a plant that may have different size and height characteristics or different color variations. So it's not just a direct clone. I mean, that's the intent typically with tissue culture, but it doesn't mean that you can't get something different out of tissue culture, which is pretty neat. All right, let's talk about some of the new plants. So my rows here are 8 feet, and I think this is about 10 here. This is the perfect spacing to get my tractor through, so if I need to dump any mulch in the future, I can do so. But I picked up another mop top butterfly bush down here. This is the one I have up front. It's growing incredibly well. It's a little different because it blooms in the spring, but it's also weeping, and it reminds me so much, the texture does, of like rosemary, which is not typically perennial in our zone. It's nice to have something with that texture and color in the garden. So I got it up front and in the back here. We have a beautiful new Arborvitae called 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. This is a whipcord Arborvitae, if you're unfamiliar with it. Very nice texture, and I wanted some more evergreen for this space. Mr. Mustard False Spirea, which I had been wanting for a while. It produces, you can see this nice color here in the as the season progresses and it ages into fall and comes out. New foliage is red too, but it has these really nice blooms that are nice for pollinators. My goal was to pick up a bunch of spring meadow shrubs, but while I was there, they had some trees become available. So I took the trees, and the shrubs will be sent to me in September, and then we can go over those. But this is a ironwood from Prue and Winter's collection. It's called Persian Spire, I believe. Yeah. So right now it looks very much like a just green generic ironwood because it's been in greenhouse conditions under the greenhouse. But Persian Spire is interesting because you can see the foliage here has dark foliage. It's also very upright. So here hardy enzomes 5 through 9, 8 to 10 foot wide, 20 to 25 foot tall. And so I was trying to figure where I was going to put this on the property, and I figured right here would be really great because we've got a yellow, this is a birch here, which will have yellow fall color, flame amour maple, which is going to have red fall color. This will have yellow fall color, and that is a Japanese maple called Samurai Sword, which will also have red fall color. So we'll have red, yellow, red, yellow. And I just thought that would be really beautiful in the fall. I have a hibiscus here from Walter's Gardens and Prue and Winter's. This is Spinderella. So it has more traditional like hibiscus looking flowers. These are aged here, but they're like a pink and white swirl. Let's see if I got the tag down here. Right here. So that's really pretty. And then I got a few of these stokesia, these new stokesia, which are really beautiful. They bloom late summer, but this one's called Riptide. Yeah, totally stoked Riptide. Beautiful purple to blue here. We have some very loud cicadas this morning. I planted a new Baptisia over here. So some of these things I ordered in the spring, some of the perennials, and they weren't in the order, so I picked them up while I was there. This is Sparkling Sapphires. It's a smaller Baptisia because they can get pretty wide. I wanted one that was kind of narrow, so I put it here to replace a shrub that had died last year in the back shrub border. And I've got a couple, so this is a hosta 𝗟𝗂𝗏, which is a sport of Empress Wu, which gets huge, so it'll fill that space really nicely. And I planted a few hostas behind there that are near the allium, so hopefully they won't become deer food. I also have another Starway to Heaven snowbell. So if you remember the Starway to Heaven I had that I planted last year, died to the ground over winter, and it's become a very beautiful like shrub form. I got to find somewhere to put this one, but I'm going to hope, since this one's a little bigger than the one I planted last year, that it will go survive a little through winter much better. I also have a Limelight Prime Hydrangea Standard, which I'm really excited about. If you're local, I had looked at these, getting one of these from, I think it's called New Carlisle Nursery. It's north of Dayton. They did have some Limelight Prime Hydrangea Standards, which are the Limelight Prime. I'm interested in them over Limelight because they just hold their blooms up better around here. And you'll see these are, of course, much better, much stronger stems than what you would find on a Limelight Standard. But this is going to go around the pool area, so it's already designated for a space. I have an echinacea here called The Price is White, which is a beautiful white echinacea. And then I have some quartz of a avalanche birch, where I got to find somewhere to put it. Avalanche birch can get really large, so I'm deciding where I'm going to place this one. I've considered placing it behind the barn, just to have some trees back there. But I'm trying, see, my goals with this property are I want to make sure everything's pretty accessible from the tractor, just to make it easier for me to move things around when I need to. So I'd like to keep that spot pretty open. I have chip drops come back there and dump wood chips from time to time, which I'm going to need some more here soon because I went through all the wood chips that I had piled up since last year that had been starting to break down. But planting trees at the front of the property or past in front of the house really is a little more difficult because the soil further up the front half of the property is much more gravelly than it is back here at the back of the property. And then I have this entire area right here, which is dedicated to septic system. And then the area there, which is backup septic system if this area were to ever fail. I do have some space over here, but that would mean it would shade out the cut flower garden a little bit. So I'm having to be pretty strategic, especially with this birch that can get really large over time, of where I want to plant things. So I got to figure out what I want to do about that. We also learned about Leafjoy's or Proven Winners houseplant line a little more and the goals of that brand and what they have done or looking forward to doing. So it was really fascinating to hear about that from Heather because Leafjoy is wanting to make plants accessible to everyone. If you're in or familiar with the houseplant space, you may have seen that over the past few years there's been some really crazy prices attached to small little cuttings of monsteras and other rare houseplants, like hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars for houseplants, which is absurd. And so Proven Winners and Leafjoy have been trying to enter this market to make it so that that stuff doesn't really happen and make it more accessible to people. So for example, Thai constellation, Leafjoy will take maybe that plant and evaluate its genetics and make sure that it's viral free, because a lot of those houseplants that are on the market or sold through random marketplaces may also have viruses that will eventually die, and then you spend hundreds of dollars on a plant that is infected with a virus that will not live for a very long time. So everything coming out of the Leafjoy line has been tested for viruses and diseases very well, and then bred so that they'll survive longer. So some of the issues with some of those variegated plants is they don't have enough chlorophyll to actually thrive and survive. And so they'll work on the genetics of that plant until they get it to a point where it doesn't have a huge issue with blocks of the plant that don't have any chlorophyll, which means it's just not going to be super healthy, although it is pretty. And then they release that as a name in their program. And so it's just really interesting. They're trying to make stuff super sustainable. So they recently come out with a line of leaf cleaners and things that are shipped in aluminum bottles that are infinitely recyclable. They've also come out with some stakes for plants, house plants, clips, and even wire that is not actually wire. They're all made from plants, like potatoes and stuff. So I got to see some of this stuff at Cultivate, and I was like, this is so weird that it's made out of plants. Even the wire, it blew my mind that it wasn't just a plastic coated little piece of metal, that it was just made from like potatoes or another plant matter. So I really appreciate the sustainability that Proven Winners is putting into their products. They're also working on new containers for their annuals. So I asked Marshall, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Proven Winners, if I could bring some of these home to show y'all the difference in them. And he was very excited that I do so. So Proven Winners has been working on a lot of sustainability for their containers for a while, and that's probably not new to you if you're aware of it. They have 100% recycled plastic pots here, which are a very forward-thinking approach for the industry that produces a lot of plastic. Recently, they came out with these compostable pots that are also really nice. But the thing is, all of my annuals came from Proven Winners and these this year, and I found that they were really difficult to get the plants out of. Some of them anyway, the roots tend to cling to the inside surface of them for some reason because it wasn't completely smooth. And in some cases, it was taking me twice as long to plant my plants out of them. And I actually messaged my friend Sky from Hamilton House Designs on Instagram because she got some too. And I was like, these seem more difficult to use than I would have hoped they would have been. And you know what? I mentioned this to Marshall earlier in the week before I found out they were going to be going over this information, and they're coming out with a new one. Zero plastic, And the inside, I mean, you cannot tell that this is not like plastic. It's wild, but it's not. And so it's compostable as well from a commercial perspective. And the inside is super smooth. So the plants should slide out of them really easily. Like, it is wild that like this is plastic, although it's 100% recycled, and this is not, and it is like sturdy. So I'm really excited to see these new compostable pots start to be used in the lineup here that is made from not plastic, zero plastic. And the funnest part of the week was just getting to see some of my friends again and seeing some of the people that from Proven Winners that I've known for several years now. When I started my YouTube channel about 5 years ago, I never expected any of this. It's actually kind of wild. I met Aaron, the impatient gardener, for the first time, was it last year? And it was really wild. Like, I watched Aaron for years before I started a YouTube channel. And it's one of those like fangirl moments, I guess. But we're all just people. So Robbie was there. Robbie's like a brother to me. Chiming from California, Coastal Homestead. Panat was there. So many other people that I've just come to know and love over the years. And I'm so happy to be a part of that group. It's really, really fun. Thank y'all for joining me. I'm going to go edit this video and enjoy my Labor Day. And this evening, I think I'm going to come out and get a few more things planted. Thank y'all. And remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.